Well, this is Snitterfield Reservoir. It's an absolutely fantastic venue, famed for its head of crucian carp. There's also tench in here, some lovely bream, and there's some big carp in here as well, although they don't come out very often. But the target, whenever I come to a place like this, has got to be the tench and crucians. Who doesn't like catching tench and crucians? And the bait is to reflect that, really. So very, very simple bait menu. I've just gone down a pellet, corn and dead maggot route. I don't think you need anything else than that. You could come and fish casters and have a fantastic day. You could just fish live maggots and have a fantastic day. It's pellets and corn that I'm primarily going to try and fish with. The maggots are on standby if those two options aren't working. So they're all nice and easy, familiar baits to everyone. Really, really simple stuff. Starting with the pellets, you can't go wrong with good old 2mm micro pellets. I've just wetted some up, cover them with water until they're nice and wet and damp and nice and soft, and everything likes micro pellets. Everything will settle over those. So micro pellets are one of the best baits you can feed on a slope, because they should stay on that slope rather than bigger items that will just roll down the slope and take the fish away. A little lesson a guy taught me on a very steep slope in commercial fishery many years ago, and it's really stood me in good stead feeding micro pellets whenever there's a steep slope. So I've got, what's that, a pint and a half of micro pellets, ample for a day today. And then I've also got some expanders. Now I've actually got enough there to actually feed. Now most people think you just put expander pellets on the hook, but I've got some 4mm Pro expanders there. I've just wetted them up, pumped them so they all sink, and what's that, it's about 3/4 of a pint there. Ample for a day's fishing here, but I can also feed. I'm a big believer in matching the hatch, so I can actually drip a few in by pot or by hand and actually put one on the hook as well. I've also got just a few 6mm as well, just to try as a change bait as well. Sometimes the 6mm is a little bit more selective, and if we are getting small fish trouble, a place like this, even the roach will expand the pellets. So it's a useful bait to have something a little bit bigger, 6mm, to try and pick out those crafty crucians and tench. So and where would we be without the good old faithful sweet corn on a reservoir like this? And it's a lovely visual bait. Again, because it's a slope, corn is nice and heavy, but because it's got flat sides and it's really irregularly shaped, it should stay put on that slope. And also, because it's heavy, it's one of the heaviest hook baits we can actually use in fishing. It works as a nice plummet as well. So you can use it to anchor your hook bait on the bottom, and by having a nice fine bristled tip on your pole float, you can actually tell if your corn's off the bottom or on the bottom just by how much bristle's on show, because the weight of the corn is one of the few baits that will act quite positively on your pole float bristle. And then we've got some dead maggots. These have just been bagged up for several days now, and I've covered in water just to make sure they don't come round. We may or may not use those today. Hopefully we'll just catch on corn and expander pellets, but it's always there as a nice change bait. Skimmers especially are quite partial to a dead maggot or two. The problem with feeding maggots or casters or worms or anything like that on these venues, and everywhere I've been just lately this year, is the tiny little perch. It seems to be a fantastic year for tiny perch, and they've really exploded everywhere I've been, and it's made maggot fishing really awkward, and pellets and corn just seem to be so much more selective, and you're not catching these little waspy perch. And then the final ingredient is a bit of ground bait. Again, not a lot mixed up there, probably 1/3 of a bag. Now this is a prototype sweet fish meal mix I've been testing for dynamite baits, so hopefully it'll be out soon, so I can't say any more than that. But it's a nice dark, not too filling. We'll see how well it works today, but I tend to mix it on the damp side, and again, because of this slope, I don't want to feed anything in a ball, so I'm just going to feed it loose, so it will just cascade down and just sit on that slope. That's really important. Don't feed anything that can roll down the slope, or any balls of ground bait or anything like that. We're going to be fishing close in, so we're not in too much depth, and there's not even a ripple on the water today, so there's no tow or anything to worry about. So we're going to feed that nice and loose, and it's just going to cascade down, and I think that actually helps anyway, that little bit of cloud coming down anyway, rather than bombing it down in a ball. So but we'll see. Anyway, I'm quite confident we're going to catch over that. So we've got micro pellets, a bit of ground bait, expanders, corn and some dead maggots. If I don't catch on that, then we never will, because there's not a lot of bait there. I've got 6 little tubs there, more than enough to catch a decent weight of fish at a venue like this. Well, I'm only fishing for small to medium sized fish today, and hopefully catching plenty of fish as well and getting lots of bites and being really busy. Tench and crucians are the main target, and the tench probably won't go more than £2 if I'm lucky. The crucians maybe £1, and the biggest fish I'm expecting to see in hook is probably a bream, maybe £2 to £3, if at all. So when I'm sort of speed fishing and after a weight of small fish quite quick, I do quite like a nice short handle. That's just 2 pieces of my Aquos 4-metre handle, the top 2 bits, and a lovely light, super light free flow landing net. Now that's the smallest one they do, and it's absolutely ideal for places like this. Just really nice and manoeuvrable, can scoop fish really fast, nice and just the right depth for actually unhooking fish. It's just the size and shape and lightness for catching lots of small fish pretty fast is absolutely ideal, and it's effortless. I can hold that one-handed, no problem. And that's my main go-to landing net. So on a venue like this, or on a canal, or if I'm speed fishing on a lake for roach or whatever, then this is my setup really. A nice little free flow, super light net, and a little shortish handle. A lot of people ask me about this little bit here. Well, that's just an up and over pole rest, and I put it on a little short arm, a little cut down arm I've put on my side tray, and my landing net locks in there. Even on a windy day, it's not going to budge, and I know exactly where it is every time. So after netting a fish, it's boom, it's there. A lot of people will put it here, which is fine. You put it wherever you feel safe and comfortable for fishing. But I don't like the fact the landing net can drop down here and it's clattering around and catching on things. So I like to have it there, out the way, but within arm's reach. So I know exactly where it is every single time, and I don't even have to look. So that's my go-to landing net today. That's what I'm going to be using the most. But there are some zoo creatures in here, and if I do hook one, I want to be able to get it out. And it's something I do on a river if there's an outside chance of getting a big barbel or a 6-pound bream or something like that. Sometimes on the canals there's big bream about, or bonus chub or something like that. So it's just nice to have a second landing net on standby. This is all well and good, but I don't really want to be, if I'm lucky enough to get something over £10, even a pike, you know, we catch a few pike on some of the venues we fish, and if I do hook a pike, I'm not really going to be able to get it in there, but I will get it in this one. And this is a much bigger carp landing net, bigger holes and everything. It's still pretty light, nice and robust, really strong, and this is on a 4-metre Matrix Horizon handle. 4 meters is just very useful when you've hooked a big fish. Wherever it pops up, hopefully we can net it. And also, I've said before on previous videos, you can hold it there and you've got a bit of counterbalance behind you as well. So, but that just stays well out of the way. I just put it to the side like that. And to be honest, today I'll probably just completely forget about that landing net, but it's there if I do hook a zoo creature. I don't want to be scrambling up the bank trying to put a bigger landing net head on. It's there if I need it. Well, a venue like this at Snitterfield Reservoir is fantastic for catching on the pole, and that's all I'm going to be doing today. Now, yes, I own a 16-metre pole, but I'm not going to go out to 16 metres today. It's a huge mistake I see a lot of people do. They've got a 16-metre pole or a 13-metre pole or even an 8-metre margin pole. They go straight out to the full length of whatever pole they've got and they'll just fish there. Well, I've only got 5 sections of pole out today. That's two sections, which is my top kit, and then I've got a number 3 section, and then I've got my number 4 and my number 5, and these 2 sections are actually only going to come into play if I hook a big fish and I need to stop it reaching the weed, or I need to follow it out or steer it out of a weed bed or whatever. These are just in reserve to add, because I'm actually only going to be fishing 3 sections of pole today. As far as I'm concerned, on a venue like this, we've got the lake to ourselves today. They've obviously seen the weather forecast because it's going to rain later. and the fish are close in. The fish are used to seeing food close in. There's a bit of cover close in, and all the food's going to naturally gather at the bottom of these slopes, and there's no need to go any further out than 3 or 4 sections of pole, especially for tench and crucians, which I'm hopefully going to catch a few of today. They notoriously like a bit of inside cover, and the only species that you might have to go a bit further out for are bream and skimmers. But actually, a venue like this, and lots of commercial fisheries and that I fish, actually you catch really big skimmers down the margins sometimes. They obviously don't read the textbooks, because skimmers and bream will feed down the margins on the right day, and if you get your feeding right. So that's all we're going to fish, a number 3 section with a top kit. Now I've got 2 top kits with me. One's got 10 to 12 slicking, and one's got the orange, slightly stronger 12 to 14 slick. Now I think the 10 to 12 will be ample, but I can beef it up and fish 12 to 14 if I need to. Both those are slightly on the heavy side for our target species, which is a pound crucian, maybe a tench, £1.5, maybe £2, and silverfish. But there's weed beds here, there's all sort of hidden obstructions, and we need to boss those fish a little bit and be in control. And tench and crucians especially are notorious for like a dogged sort of jag fight, and they plough down deep and that. So we've got to control those fish a little bit and show them who's boss, obviously without pulling the hook out. So they've been set on the soft side, but they will power up quite nice and quickly. And obviously the obligatory side puller as well is absolutely essential for a venue like this. We can shorten the elastic at this end if we need to, and just get those slightly bigger fish under control. So if there was no snags, if it was completely snag free, no weeds, nothing to worry about, then yeah, the green 8 to 10 slick would be absolutely brilliant. But I know from previous visits here, they pull a bit, and if they want to reach those weed beds, then they will. So we need to show them who's boss a little bit with slightly more elastic. Anyway, we could just catch on a top kit today. We could just catch just there, a metre or so past our keep net. But the last thing I want to do is hook a fish there, play the fish there, and net the fish there. So by adding a section, find my section, by adding a pole section, we can fish the same sort of range out, but to our left and right. And that also gives us 2 swims to feed. So we can alter things, we can catch fish off one and alternate. I'll come to that in another tip. But so I can fish a top kit and one there, and a top kit and one there. And by going round in an arc like that, it's a real good tactic that works on lots and lots of venues. So top kit and one, or top kit and 2 on some venues. There, that's all we need to do today. And I'm sure we're going to catch a load of fish just doing that. Well, I've actually had one little quick look and I've actually managed a tiny little baby tench. So that's cheered me up. So we're definitely going to catch a few fish today, I hope. So I'm just going to put a pinch of expanders in there, just a pinch of micro pellets, and we're going to refeed the swim we caught that tench on, and then have a look on the opposite swim. So because it's a noticeable slope here, quite a steep gradient, I'm not going to actually feed directly on my float. I'm going to actually feed just slightly short, just to compensate for the slope. I've actually seen some bubbles a foot past where I fed from the initial feed. So already I think it's been quite wise to feed up the slope and then fish slightly down it. Any sort of slope like that is something I'll regularly do. You can always fish past your feed anyway, a little bit further down the slope to try later on anyway, but oh, there we are, brilliant. That's a fish off each swim now. And as you can see, they do pull a little bit. So I'm hoping, well, it might be a tench, might be a crucian. This 10 to 12 slick's coping all right, but like I say, I've got the 12 to 14 on reserve. Oh, it's a crucian. Brilliant. So we've already caught our 2 target species in 2 drops. I'm absolutely made up with that. And that's a good one for here as well. Yeah, right in the top lip. Look at that. Who doesn't like catching fish like that? I absolutely love them. Funny looking fish, really nice fish to catch. Quite difficult to catch at times, but there's plenty of them in this place. Oh, that's made, I'm made up. I've literally had 2 casts, a little tiny bar of soap tench, and a lovely golden crucian. So brilliant. So we're just going to repeat the exercise. I fed a little bit more, a little bit more ground bait to my left. I've got one of the new Matrix toss spots there. So I'm just going to feed with a toss spot. I've got my cupping kit on standby behind me, but to be honest, I'm not really expecting to use it. So, but that's on a 4mm expander, on an 18 hook, 012 bottom. I've got an 016 main line because you need a bit of durability, and it gives me the option of stepping up to 014 or even 016 if I have to. But to be honest, for tench and crucians, I try and fish on the finer side if I can. So 012, which is about £3, is what I'll be using most of the day, I hope. And that's a 4x12 Malman Dusty Titan float, that is, and that's got a 1.5mm hollow tip, which is just about perfect for corn and expanders, and the corn will actually act on that float bristle. So so it should, well, as we've already seen, I've had 2 decent bites and I've not missed them. So and then for shotting, I've just got a strung bulk of 6 number 10s. They're about 1 inch apart. We can mess around with a shotting pattern, but that's just a nice sort of shotting pattern that works well on a lot of venues like this. And that's it. So let's go back out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to feed one swim, fish another, and when I've caught a fish, I'll feed that swim and go to the other. And we'll vary it during the day, but in the start of the session, that's what I'll do. Just let the fish settle on the little bit of bait I've fed, and then we can try later on dropping a bit of bait in and actually going straight down on it. But for the start, we're just going to feed one swim and fish the other and rotate, and hopefully catch a fish off each in rotation. It's a lovely way of keeping 2 swims ticking over quite nicely. Again, just a pinch of micro pellets, pinch of 4mm expanders, and then we caught that fish on the left, so we're going to feed the left. Just a little bit short. I've been lining it up with one of the pallets on the far bank, and then I'm going to just lower it where we topped up here. So incidentally, these pallets are movable. You actually slide them up and down the slope depending on how high the water is. Another fish. What's that? Might be a baby crucian by the looks of it. Is it? No. Oh, it's a hybrid. Or is it a skimmer? Don't know my fish. It's a skimmer. Well, he put a good account of himself up on that 10 to 12 slick. So yeah, nice skimmer. Down the edge in just 3.5 foot of water as well. So it just proves we didn't have to go out into that deep water to catch fish like this. I think that also proves that what I'm doing will attract all sorts of species. So we've had 3 casts, 3 different species. Right, I'm going to try actually a 6mm expander now, just to see if we can get a quicker bite. There's no harm in experimenting on a day like this. I'm going to put a few 4mm expanders in the pot, but I'm also just going to top it up with a little bit of loose ground bait now. Put a little bit of ground bait on one of the swims. That little puff of ground bait going down can normally work really well in your favour. So we're going to feed that. I'm going to stick to ground bait on the left and pellets to the right. Just line it up a little bit short of where we're fishing, and then I'm going to lower it into the opposite swim whilst I just let that settle. And if we don't get a bite here after a minute, I'll quickly drop it over that left hand swim. It's a lovely way of just keeping 2 swims ticking over, modest amounts of bait. We're fishing at such short range that there's no need to feed with a big pot. But I can also throw pinches of bait as well if I get a bit brave. A little plop of a few 4mm expanders or grains of corn, and that can really help to pull in a few fish sometimes. But well, I'll throw a couple now just to show you, just around the float. A little bit short of the float if I can. Oh, that was nice and accurate. So let's just see if we can catch on this 6mm expander. If you're ever in doubt, I just pull it up the slope slightly, and that just guarantees there's a little bit more of the hook bait on the slope. Now the crucians in here are very, very shy biting, so you will get bites that you just won't hit. and that just comes with the territory with crucian carp fishing. Obviously we could fish really fine and tiny hooks, but then you run the risk of not being able to get them out. I think about 0.12, sometimes 0.10 is the lightest I'll drop. Any lighter than that and I think you're asking for trouble. Ooh, that's a good bite. What have we got here? That's not a crucian, I don't think. Lovely. As you can see, this little super light landing net as well is absolutely ideal for the fish like that today. Just pop them in. There we are. Well, as you can see, it's raining. We've needed a bit of rain, so I'm not complaining, but I'm going to get this done quick just before I pop my coat on. Plumbing up on a slope. As you can see, we've got these concrete slopes going all the way down, and for every 6 inches you go, it's going to go down a few more inches. So you cannot find a flat spot on a venue like this. But what you want is a nice decent plummet, just a nice standard 20 gram, but quite a wide base. You could use 30 gram, I wouldn't use any less than 20 gram on a slope like this. And basically, I think because it's quite clear, I'm treating it almost like a winter depth for where I go on commercials. I like to find 3.5 foot of water, and it's quite clear. I can see a good 18 inches down, so that's what I'm going to look for again here. I just find 3.5 foot, for whatever reason, does seem to be a golden depth for clear water, which is what you get in winter on commercials and also on a reservoir like this. Oh, that rain's really coming now. But if I can find any sort of reduction in the gradient, then that's brilliant. But if not, I'll just find 3.5 foot. I've marked it on my pole already, that depth. And then I'll go out, and basically I can tell it's just going away and away and away. So I'm just going to swing round in an arc, find that depth, look at something on the far bank. There's a nice pellet there I can see, and that's it. I can just about see the bristle. So I'm going to come back, and what I do, if I've got it with me, is it's vitally important to mark the depths. I see people, I don't know how you manage to fish unless you've marked the depth as a reference point, but as you can see there, I've got a little depth marker there, and I'll plumb up to there so I can just see the bristle. But then I'm just going to pull the float up about an inch, just move those float rubbers, about an inch to compensate for any variation in depth. But the other thing that's absolutely vital on a slope is a short line above the float between pole connector and the float tip. Any longer than about 6 inches, and there's so much of a degree of variation in where your float could be if there's any sort of wind or tow on the venue, you could be miles out. So and 2 little back shot there, they're number 8s. That just helps everything stays nice and straight above the float, so I know I'm bang on the money every time. And similarly, for that sort of accuracy, I've got my toss pot only what, an inch and a half back from the pole tip. I don't want it this far back because again you're going to ruin accuracy. And a lot of my feed I'll feed this side, just this side of the slope. Might be 6 inches, depending how steep that gradient is. If it's really steep, then I'll come, you know, as much as half a metre back and feed there, but I will fish where I've plumbed. So, and if in doubt, whilst you're fishing, never hesitate to put the plummet back on and have a plumb up. Another good indicator is if you get a decent grain of corn, nice heavy grain of corn, pop that on the hook, and that works like a little mini plummet as well. So you can tell by shipping out if that float sinks, then you're off the bottom. So you just have to drag the float into the bank a little bit until you can see that bristle. Then you know your corn hook bait's just on the bottom, and it's the ultimate in bite detection, especially for these shy biting crucians. I'm going to give it 30 seconds, then I think I'm going to have to get my coat. Ooh, yes. Wow, what have we got here? Big bream. That is a big bream. Look at that. That is £4 of anyone's money. I did not expect to see one that size today. What a bonus. And on the corn, an inch over depth, pulled into the slope. Let's have a look at that. He's not the prettiest of fish because he's got a bit of a short tail, but wow, look at that for a bream. Let's get the coat on. There you are, absolutely cracking bag of fish full of cameras, all in 3.5 foot of water on 2 lines, no more than 3 sections out all day. Some absolutely gorgeous crucians that this venue is famous for. A couple of tench, not sure where they've gone, there's one there. And 3 or 4 very big bream, including that big beauty there. So yeah, fantastic day, really close in, a cracking little reservoir. Hopefully it's inspired you to get out there and try my little tricks. Don't fish too far out and don't feed too much bait, and just be careful where you feed on that slope.